Alright, today in the Man Cave, going to be doing a little bit more lockdown maintenance. I am going to be cleaning and lubing my motorcycle chain. Since we're not doing a whole lot of riding right now, I think now is the perfect time to actually give your bike a little bit of extra love and maintenance. I'm going to clean and lubricate my motorcycle chain. Now, before I actually get my hands dirty, I want to have a quick discussion on motorcycle chains. Now, I'm going to split them into two distinct varieties. You've got your old school standard chains, and you've got your O-ring, X-ring, or varieties thereof, which we will call our sealed chains. Now, in terms of pros and cons, both types have advantages and disadvantages. For your standard chains, well, this is how motorcycle final drive chains have always been made. This is your standard metal outer plates, metal inner plates, metal rollers, and metal pins, all rubbing up against each other. And they work surprisingly well, provided that you keep it very clean and very well lubricated. The main advantage of a standard chain is they are relatively less expensive compared to a fancy O-ring chain. Now, you'll usually find these types of chains spec'd on your more entry-level bikes, your smaller capacity bikes. Commuter bikes will probably have one of these chains for the very reason that they are inexpensive. Now, you will also find these types of chains spec'd on bikes that aren't necessarily built to a budget because of its other advantages, which is they are lighter than O-ring chains. And I just found this out. This is quite surprising. Standard chains, provided that you keep them clean and very well lubricated, actually offer less drag or friction than a fancy O-ring chain. So for people who are looking for the ultimate in weight savings and eking out every last bit of horsepower out of an engine, a well-maintained and lubricated standard chain might actually offer some advantages over an O-ring chain. Now, as for the O-ring chains, they do offer some advantages. The main one being you've got a chain that typically lasts longer than a standard chain. It requires less maintenance. Less dirt gets into those moving parts, which means that the chain degrades less or over a longer period of time than a standard chain. In terms of disadvantages, these chains are usually built a little beefier compared to a standard chain, which makes them heavier. And like I said, I was surprised to find out that an O-ring chain actually has more drag than a standard chain, and that's down to those rubber O-rings. Those rubber O-rings squished between the outer plates and the inner plates are there for one reason, and that is to keep the factory injected lubricant or grease where it's supposed to be, between the pin and the roller. Those little rubber O-rings which keep the lubrication in there between the rollers and the pins actually cause a lot of friction between the outer plates and the inner plates. You'll usually find these chains spec'd on your more expensive machines. Your leisure bikes, your sport bikes will probably have one of these chains. And honestly, bikes like those usually have an excess of power anyway, which makes the extra friction a moot point in my opinion. But whichever chain your bike has, standard or O-ring, both of them will require regular cleaning and maintenance. So get your bike up on its center stand or put your bike up on a paddock stand. Let's head out to the garage and get some work done. All right, let's get down to some cleaning here, guys. As you can see, I've got the bike up on a rear stand. Put your bike up on a center stand if you have it. If you don't, you can get by with your side stand, but you will have to chase the bike around the driveway as you roll it around so that you have access to all areas of the chain. Now, as far as cleaning equipment goes, specialty brushes like these are a nice thing to have, but honestly, an old toothbrush will get the job done just as well. As far as chain cleaners go, if you've got commercial chain cleaners available to you, go ahead and use that. They're great. If you don't, I'm using old-fashioned kerosene here. Now, I'm betting that 9 times out of 10, when you check the owner's manual of your bike, they actually recommend kerosene for chain cleaning. It's what I've got, and it's what I'm going to use. Other than that, a little piece of cardboard between your chain and your rear wheel is a great way to shield your tire from the residue of your chain cleaner. And eventually, once this is clean and we get down to lubing it, you most definitely want to keep lube off your rear tire because things get very slippery if you get any lube on that tire. So I think you can figure out what needs to happen here. We just need to take our brush, dip it into our solvent, scrub away at the chain, work your way around the chain, get around here to these areas near the sprocket, give your sprocket a bit of a clean as well. If you've got a specialty 3-sided brush like this, it's great to use. You can just run your entire chain through that. And once you've gone through the entire chain, just give it a good wipe with a rag. And once you've done that, you're actually done. Well, now that you've got your chain clean, we're now down to lubing it, and we are at the crossroads of a very sticky discussion. lubricants. Now everybody's got an opinion on this, but something that is often debated is WD-40. Is it a cleaner or is it a lubricant? You'll have a lot of different opinions on this, and my opinion is it's a better cleaner than a lubricant. If you look at the list of ingredients on here, WD-40 is really more of a solvent, so it does a great job of getting your chain clean. There's no denying that it does leave a little bit of oily residue, but honestly that dries out quite quickly, and there are better things to lube your chain with. I will say though that it's worth mentioning that this is perfectly safe to use on O-ring chains. It will not damage those rubber O-rings. So here we are at the very slippery discussion of lubes. Now everybody has their own favorite. You've got tons of different commercial varieties out there. You've got wet lubes, you've got dry lubes, lubes for riding in wet weather, lubes for your riding in the desert. You've got wax or paraffin-based lubes. You've got ceramic lubes. The list goes on. Honestly, they are all very good products and they all have their pros and cons. And it's probably best left to a separate video to discuss the different merits. It boils down to one very simple rule for me. Any lube is better than no lube. So use whatever you've got handy. In my case, I'm going to be using some heavy gear oil. It's what I've used in the past and it's worked very well. So let's head out to the bike and get this job done. All right, let's finish this job off. Remember my rule, any lube is better than no lube. So if you've got your fancy spray type lubes, go ahead and use that. Those are great. Personally, I am out of my spray type lube, so I'm going back to an old school approach. I'm using some old gear oil that I had lying around. If you're using oils like this, remember one rule though, the thicker the better. A gear oil, which is thick, is better than a motor oil, which will have a tendency to fling from the chain once the bike is up to speed. So when you're using an oil like this, choose the thickest one you have available to you. But remember, any lube is better than no lube. So in this case, I'm using whatever I've got available to me. No, there's no right or wrong way to do this. You could drip that oil onto that chain. Personally, I'm going to be using an old toothbrush to apply this oil. I'm just going to rub it in and saturate all the links. All sides of the chain will need a little bit of oil. Standard chains will require a little bit more oil and lubrication compared to an O-ring chain. O-ring chains are, for all intents and purposes, self-lubricating. Remember, those O-rings really just keep all the factory applied grease where it needs to be, and basically we are really just lubricating to avoid any corrosion forming on the chain. So once you've gone over the entire chain and saturated all the links on all sides and gone all the way around, let that sit for a little while, and then you can just take your rag and wipe off the excess. And just like that, we are done. Well, there you have it, basic chain cleaning and lubrication. It doesn't matter what kind of bike you have or what kind of chain you have on there. Make sure you keep it clean and well lubricated. A well-maintained bike is a more efficient bike and a safer bike. If you like this kind of content, don't forget to click subscribe so that you don't miss any of our new videos. Well, like we said in our last video, till we're back out on the road riding, let's use our time wisely. Let's stay safe, let's stay healthy, and let's stay home. I'll see you guys in the next episode of the Man Cave.